The Pro Wrestling Almanac Podcast. Celebrating professional wrestling from yesterday, today, and tomorrow. For wrestling fans, by wrestling fans. Hello out there, everyone. My name is Tristan. I am the host of the Pro Wrestling Almanac Podcast. This is our debut edition. With me is my co-host, Mike Mayer. Say hi, Mike.
Hi, Mike.
Thank you for that. So I'm supposed to be the funny one. Don't forget that. So I'm sure you're all worried. Great, another podcast. A bunch of neckbeards, overweight, living in their mother's basements, doing a podcast, thinking they know about wrestling. Well, I can assure you that while we both are quite overweight, I at least don't have a neckbeard, and I happen to be in my own basement. So my wife is in charge of the basement here, not my mom. So we want to just talk about wrestling. That's pretty much why we're here. Being that this is the debut edition, there's probably going to be some growing pains, so we'll work these kinks out as we go through it. But we want to do a couple of things. First, we want to talk about kind of how wrestling is going today, what's been going on, what's going on in the major promotions, and any kind of news items that have dropped in the last little bit that we feel are worthy of bringing up. Then we're going to do a segment we're going to call The Ghosts of Wrestling Past, and we're going to pick an old show from WWE, WCW, ECW, New Japan, Ring of Honor, any of them. And we're going to kind of dissect it in our own way. We're going to talk about the goods, the bads, things that we found interesting, things that may have been historically significant at the time, or for the future. And it may just devolve into a completely different topic, and that's fine, because the whole point of this is to talk about wrestling. It's supposed to be a fun conversation. Once we do that, then we're going to go into the indie spotlight. What I want to do is I want to put a focus on indie wrestling federations throughout the country and the world eventually. When I lived in Colorado, I got really big into the Colorado indie wrestling scene. So there's a lot of guys there that I feel are worthy of recognition that I want to be able to provide that spotlight to. So we're going to do that. So first, let's just kind of, we're going to get to know each other. Go ahead, Mike. Tell everybody something about yourself.
Well, first of all, let's talk about the fact that you and I have known each other dating back to about, 2002?
2001, actually.
2001.
The first time we ever hung out, just the two of us, was to go to Stickenstein and watch Chris Jericho beat The Rock and Stone Cold in the same night to become the first ever WWF Undisputed Champion.
Which, remember, I called that and you thought I was crazy.
Well,
I ended up right.
Yeah, I knew you were crazy. Still doesn't mean I was wrong.
But as far as wrestling, never been a huge, most people would consider themselves a diehard wrestling fan. I've always watched it ever since I was a little kid, going back to WWF Superstars when it used to be on Fox, Saturday afternoons, basically.
In Los Angeles.
In Los Angeles.
It was syndicated, so.
And, was really excited when we finally got cable, and coincidentally, we got cable right around the time when Monday Night Raw started. So
I figured it was right around the time you started discovering pornography, but whatever.
So, I've been watching it since then. Back when you and I were hanging out and you were living in California, we were constantly watching Monday Night Raw, watching SmackDown, going to the pay-per-views. Lately, I've pretty much been only watching, if you can even call them pay-per-views anymore, just because they're on the network.
They still call them pay-per-views.
which I find funny though, because you're paying for the subscription for everything, not just the one event.
Sure.
I think just because it's so into the lexicon with everybody that's just how you refer to them. I don't think that will change.
If you want to, basically split hairs about it, Vince McMahon pretty much invented pay-per-view. So I'm pretty sure he can call it whatever he wants.
No, definitely. Even going back to, when he was doing the licensing rights for the Inoki Ali fight, a lot of people know that he was actually the person who coined the term mixed martial arts.
Yep.
But
I did not know, but you pointed out to me about a week ago.
Yeah. Getting back to currently, though, I haven't been watching Raw or SmackDown lately, just been very busy. I have been watching the pay-per-views, but thankfully I caught this week's Raw, which I thought was very good, and we'll get into that in just a little bit.
Well, I'm glad that you were so in-depth in letting the people know that we have absolutely no idea what we're talking about, so there's no reason to listen. But, that's okay. You might not. I do. At least I like to think I do. I run this. Sorry, let me back up a little bit. The purpose of this podcast is to kind of play off of the website that I'm currently building, called the Professional Wrestling Almanac. It's designed to be an almanac for professional wrestling. So it's a no-frills page, really. It's results with details on the matches, the officials, presenting professional wrestling as a sport. So there's not going to be reviews of the shows per se, maybe as time goes on, but it's going to be a true almanac. So this is going to play off of that and try to get a little bit more recognition to the website, and the website giving recognition to the podcast. And if I make a few bucks in the process, that's nice too. But I was working on the website all day today, and just to prove how wrestling crazy I am, I was building my website on my desktop and my laptop so I could preview it across both computers. And I was chatting about wrestling with Mike, preparing for this podcast on my phone, while I had New Japan's G1 Climax from today playing on my PlayStation, which coincidentally has WWE 2K17 in the disc tray. And I learned something about myself today. I learned that I do not speak nearly enough Japanese to be focusing on my computer and trying to pick up what's going on in the wrestling without watching it. So that was a neat little thing.
Oh, you can't multitask in a foreign language?
Well, I don't speak Japanese. So I was hoping to maybe pick it up like Kevin Owens picked up English. Learning, so he elbowed him in the head, and they said elbow, so that's what elbow is. It doesn't quite work with Japanese. I couldn't do it. But, so that's basically the purpose of this podcast, is we just want to have a conversation about wrestling. It's definitely a pre-taped podcast. We're going to be doing insert interviews throughout the weeks. There probably won't be one that's going to be attached to this podcast, but in the ones in the future, there should be, with some of the indie wrestlers that I'm friends with, promoters that I'm friends with, and then hopefully branching off into some more recognizable names. And I really hope to get a good following for this podcast. So what do you say we jump right into it, Mike?
Sounds good.
I know you had a few little tidbits you wanted to talk about, so why don't you pick one?
Well, let's start off with last night's Monday Night Raw.
Okay. Thought it was a great show.
It was a very good show.
Let me cut in real quick. It was the highest rated Raw since July 17th. It got a 1.5 in the 18 to 49 demographic. It's also had the highest viewership since April 17th. And that was 3.240 million viewers average through the 3 hours. So just a couple of little details there for you.
Truthfully, it doesn't surprise me. I'd say it's probably been one of the better Raws since WrestleMania.
Okay.
I mean, we always know that the Raw following WrestleMania is just crazy. I mean, you have all of the fans that came over from, well basically all over the world.
Raw SummerSlam's getting to that point, too.
It is, especially with SummerSlam. I mean, for years it was held here in Los Angeles. What was that, 7 years in a row, I believe?
I don't even know. I don't think it was that many, but it was a lot.
It was a long time, and now, it's over at the Barclays Center, and it's, this is the third year now, I think? Yeah. But the opening, I mean, I absolutely loved the interaction between The Miz, Paul Heyman, and Brock Lesnar.
Oh, yes. Brock did what he does best. He stood there and looked like he was going to just gorilla rape somebody.
Which it's funny because, when Heyman started talking, which, I mean, you and I have always said, he is probably one of the greatest mouthpieces in all of professional wrestling.
Only one I can think of that comes close is Bobby Heenan. So
exactly. I mean, those two, Heenan, I would say more so just because of the longevity and how long he had been involved in wrestling, from when he was a wrestler to when he finally had to retire because of his medical problems. But when Heyman started talking about role playing, I literally just went, holy crap, where is this going?
Yeah, my jaw hit the ground.
And he kind of got it back in to where it needed to go, especially when referencing the three guys, Miz and the Miztourage.
Right. You'll be Braun Strowman, you'll be Samoa Joe, you'll be Roman Reigns. Yeah.
The big thing that I did love about it, though, was the fact that, especially for the fans in Toronto, because even though, he is still an American, Brock Lesnar owns so much property up in Canada.
Yeah.
His ranches in Canada.
His last fight, he fought out of Saskatchewan.
Yes, his last fight was in Canada.
Well, no, he fought out of Saskatchewan.
Yes,
his fight was not in Canada.
That's right. And then even the Winnipeg Jets brought him in, to do some stuff with them. I mean, he's very involved up in Canada now, loves it. This was great for them because you were able to see Brock Lesnar do what Brock Lesnar does best, which is just destroy people, but we didn't have to waste a match on it.
Well, Brock has not wrestled on Raw since he's been back, so wasting a match was never gonna be an option. But what they did do is they managed to sell the pay-per-view without forcing the interaction between Brock and the people involved.
Definitely. And speaking about that opening segment, I mean, you and I have discussed this before, but how can you not love The Miz as a heel? He's
the best pure heel, I think, since maybe like early 2000s Triple H, when I mean early 2000s, I mean like 2000, 2001, pre-quad tear Triple H, when he was doing the McMahon Helmsley faction. And before that, Ted DiBiase. That literally you love to hate him. He's so good at what you...
a basketball away from a little kid on television, for crying out loud.
Right. I mean, he made Linda McMahon bark like a dog and Rob Van Dam kiss his feet. That's pretty great. But getting back to The Miz, you love to hate the guy. During in 2010, when he was Mr. Money in the Bank, I was at the Raw in Orlando when he won the title, and the place went berserk. Miz was a heel, but he was so over with the crowd that they wanted him to win the title. If that was to happen again, I do not think it would be a nearly unanimous reaction in the positive reaction like it was. Of course, you had Ms. Girl, who won a Slammy, and she didn't like it, but I lost my voice that night. And I also, just a little aside, I also happened to be there the night that he lost the title at Extreme Rules in Tampa. So I kind of have a little affinity to The Miz because I was there for his title reign. And I watch him on TV, and I want to like the guy because he's so good at what he does. But because he's so good at what he does, I want to kick him in the teeth.
The biggest reason, truthfully, why I like The Miz, the man is a workhorse.
Oh, sure.
I mean, he, day in and day out, does what is asked of him by the WWE and constantly achieves what he needs to.
Well, and let's not undersell the fact that the man is a veteran. He has been in the WWE since 2005.
Yes. I mean, this is a guy who basically got his start as a reality television show character.
Right. He was the host of SmackDown. He was on Tough Enough. All of that parlayed from the real world. But his entire real world
was challenged.
Right. But his entire real world gimmick, if you will, was that he was a huge wrestling fan and wanted to be a wrestler. So it's very appropriate that he made it, and he got past the stigma of just being a reality star, and now he's a WWE superstar. He's made it, and he's had a lot of hiccups along the way, but right now I don't think that there is anyone better at performing their role full time than The Miz.
I agree with you 100%. One thing, and we can actually segue into another topic. What about the reports, and this doesn't really necessarily involve Monday Night Raw. We can talk about what happened on Raw with this person, but what do you think about the rumors that Enzo is receiving the Miz treatment right now?
Well, I think when you hear the backstage reports, it's pretty clear that that's what's happening. They're specifically mentioning names, so this isn't your typical Meltzer sources say, but plans could change stuff. And, speaking of Dave Meltzer, if I set my hair on fire and Dave Meltzer came over and said, dude, your hair's on fire, I would get a second opinion. But you have people like JBL saying, and the Enzo you see on camera is the Enzo that we see in the locker room, and it's getting old. And the only person who's ever surpassed that was The Miz.
Yes.
So,
but I mean, he's literally getting the same treatment. I mean, The Miz, back when Wrestlers Court was around, when The Undertaker was in charge, I mean, The Miz was literally forced to change in the bathrooms of the arena.
Allegedly, Enzo got kicked off the bus by Roman Reigns. So it's a real thing. It's not like Wrestlers Court isn't still around. It's just not around like it used to be.
Yeah.
But, I mean, maybe it is, because they kicked him off the bus.
With that being said, though, it looks like Vince and the WWE, though, is giving him a huge push right now.
I don't know about giving him a huge push. I think that they're using him to further the feud between Cass and the Big Show. And because a feud between Cass and Enzo is a non-starter, because there's no believability in it. Enzo isn't Rey Mysterio. Enzo isn't Shawn Michaels. Enzo isn't the guy, that underdog that you believe could beat a 7-foot-tall guy like Shawn Michaels could beat Diesel, like Rey Mysterio could beat Kevin Nash. Yes, I'm aware they're the same person. And Enzo has to backfight. If you look at Raw, he jumped on Kaz's back while his back was turned. And that, to me, says everything you need to know about that feud. They can't fight face-to-face, so a match between the two isn't interesting. So, I've heard the rumors, and I'm sure you were going to address it, that they would be moving him to 205 Live or to NXT. I think NXT would be a terrible idea because if he goes back to NXT, they might as well release him or just keep him in NXT because he's not going to be able to play a different character. Excuse me. But if you move him to 205 Live, then he gets to show off his wrestling ability, which has to be somewhat decent, or he wouldn't be in the WWE. I think the best thing that they could do is to make him a manager.
In the current role that he's playing right now, you can definitely see that would be a great thing. I mean, I've always felt that some of the best wrestlers have always had a manager with them. It's something that's missing in today's wrestling.
There's only one in WWE.
And he's not even considered a manager. I mean, he refers to himself as an advocate. I mean, the only manager that is even around right now in the WWE universe that is still considered a quote-unquote manager is Paul Ellery down in NXT.
Yeah, because you got Titus O'Neil, but Titus O'Neil's like an agent. And
exactly.
You've got Maurice, but Maurice is the business wife, so they don't really address that.
More like a valet almost for her husband. I
mean, Lana was for a minute. You could definitely say that she was a manager, but they're really, you're right, Ellering is basically it.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have that person who has spent the majority of their career working as a manager. Yeah. Not like a Paul Bearer or a Captain Lou, or even towards the end of his wrestling career, Freddie Blassie.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you got guys like Paul Heyman who never wrestled.
Exactly.
Paul Heyman was a manager, only ever wanted to be a manager, and that's fine by me because he's great at it.
Well, and I think if you look at what you had with Enzo and Cass, it makes sense to have him as a manager. I mean, a lot of these bigger guys are not the greatest on the mic. I mean, let's be honest. Cass is not the most dynamic person when you hand him a microphone.
He got pretty good when Enzo was hurt, but he
had to.
Right, and he's got that. He was a catchphrase guy.
Yeah, he is not a natural. So having a guy like Enzo with a guy like Cass, or having Paul Heyman with a guy like Brock Lesnar, I almost think that and this is going to segue to the main event eventually, but I almost think that it would actually help Roman Reigns if he had someone.
We talked about this the other day, and I couldn't disagree more. Would you have thought Goldberg would have been good with a manager?
No.
Because that's what Roman Reigns needs to be. He needs to be Goldberg.
The problem is, the only thing I see is that they haven't used him in that way. And I just feel that because of the exposure that he's already have, you take him from, starting off in the Shield, and then, being the guy that retired Undertaker, which that's a sore subject to begin with, for many, many wrestling fans.
Well, and it was also meaningless.
Well, exactly. I mean, I always thought that, and you and I have talked about this since we've met each other. We always said the streak needed to end, but it should have been the first and last loss for The Undertaker.
Yeah, absolutely. I only ever had two scenarios. One, winning the title and going out on top, or going out on his back.
But, the thing is, Undertaker is a very old school wrestler,
right,
and he follows the tradition of putting someone over, in his final match. I never had a problem with that, But to me, watching The Undertaker lose to Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania 30 and then come back at 31 to face Bray Wyatt, and you know me, I have been a huge Undertaker fan even since I was a little kid. I mean, two of my favorite wrestlers, The Undertaker and Mr. Perfect.
Yep.
To me, watching The Undertaker at WrestleMania fight Bray Wyatt, I'm sitting here going, I don't care anymore. The streak is over, you know?
Yes.
I mean, yes, it was sad watching him, lose to Roman Reigns because I'm not a big fan of Roman Reigns. I'm just not. But it would have made sense if he lost to Roman Reigns and had never lost prior to that.
See, I had a different thought when he had initially lost to Brock. And that thought was that it set up perfectly for what we thought then was the inevitable WrestleMania match with Sting. Because had he gone in against Sting undefeated, Sting was never going to win that match. Ever.
No.
Ever in a million years, never, ever, not going to happen. But once he lost to Brock Lesnar, anyone could beat him at WrestleMania. Just like any other undefeated streak, once the streak ends, they become just another guy because you can try to build them back up, but at a certain point, somebody else is going to beat him, and then somebody else, and somebody else. So, by having him lose at WrestleMania, had they had him face Sting, would he have won? Probably. But at that point, the end would be in question. And at the end of the day, isn't that what wrestling is supposed to be? Like, you shouldn't be able to walk into a match and know exactly how it's going to end. But with the Undertaker WrestleMania matches, you did. Was there a chance he was going to lose to Shawn Michaels the first time? The second time? No. Was there a chance he was going to lose to Triple H? Maybe. At WrestleMania 17, yes. At WrestleMania 27, no. The logical stopping point for the streak, to be honest with you, was WrestleMania 21 when he faced Randy Orton. Randy Orton was the legend killer at the time.
Yes.
That should have been when the streak ended, before it became this legendary thing that everyone got mad when it happened. If you want to be real about it, there's absolutely no logic whatsoever that you can try to bend that says that The Undertaker beats Brock Lesnar. As many times as they have faced, The Undertaker has beaten Brock Lesnar one time, and that was at SummerSlam in 2015, when The Undertaker tapped out, but the ref didn't see it, and then he pinned Brock.
Yeah, and then he gave, if I remember correctly, he gave the low blow.
Brock passed out in the Hell's Gate.
That's right.
Yeah, and Undertaker tapped out, so even when he won, he still lost. Brock had beaten him in 2 Hell in a Cell matches. So let's go ahead and stop that tangent here, though, because we totally got way off topic. We were talking about Roman Reigns, and I figured that would be a good time to address the elephant in the room, the biggest story from Raw, which was the snub from Seth Rollins to a finally coming around Dean Ambrose. I thought that was incredibly well done. The crowd reacted like he spit in his face. It was fantastically done. People were emotionally invested. When Dean put his fist out, even just talking about it now, I'm getting goosebumps. I got goosebumps when I watched it live. It was an incredible moment. And they managed to prolong it. So you talk about Roman Reigns needing the mouthpiece. Well, he's got 2 built in right there. It's going to happen.
So you think we'll see a Shield reunion?
I think it's inevitable.
It would be interesting. I mean, it would be interesting to see them go at it again as a stable and just start doing what they did, you know, however many years ago that was when they started, where they
2012.
Yeah, 2012, when they just started terrorizing the roster.
Oh yeah, it was great, and they booked them properly. At TLC, they had a TLC match that could end in pinfall or submission.
Now, of course, that's provided that Dean Ambrose still has a job in the future.
Well, why would he not?
There are the rumors going around that the upper management for the WWE views him as lazy, unmotivated, and that some of the things that have been said to him on television are being a form of punishment and trying to motivate him, and also to the point where they took him and his wife, Renee, off of Total Divas.
See, so they're continually booking him in a top spot, and somehow they're saying mean things to him, and that's to be construed as punishment. It sounds to me like someone's talking out of their ass.
Well,
that sounds like a Meltzer report.
Well, yeah, he is definitely one of those that's reporting on it. So.
Okay, yeah. So, all right, Bailey. What happened there? Toronto, Canada's Bizarro World, man.
Well, I mean, that reaction by the crowd was very Chicago/Philadelphia-esque.
Yeah, but I don't even think that Chicago and Philly would have booed Bailey. They loved Bailey.
It was a very crazy segment.
I have a feeling that she's not actually hurt, by the way. There was reports going back last couple of months that the plan for SummerSlam was Alexa Bliss versus Nia Jax. And even when they were building toward Sasha versus Alexa, it was still, plans are Alexa Bliss and Nia Jax. And then Bailey becomes the number one contender and then gets hurt. Now, I've separated my shoulder before. You're not walking around in just a loose sling like she was.
Yeah.
So, maybe she's just tougher than I am. I don't know. But, she probably is. But
getting back to that segment, though.
Yeah.
And this brings up something that we haven't talked about in a long time, but with the way she responded to the crowd.
Yes.
And they turned on her even more. Do you think the WWE needs to go back to the time where they do pre-taped recordings instead of doing everything live in the ring?
No. They may want to consider doing pre-taped interviews, and I did love the fact that Bailey came out to the ring and was interviewed. She didn't just pick up a mic and start talking to the crowd.
Yes.
I've been watching a lot of old Monday Nitros and Raws on the WWE Network, and they never did promos like that until like 1997. And they would do in-ring interviews. The interviewer and the interviewee, you would have Mean Gene or Vince McMahon or Jim Ross, Tony Schiavone, whomever, standing there asking questions. And then the person would answer the questions. And I really liked that segment was like that. I wish they would go back to that more often. Obviously, the opening segment was of the same vein because it was in a talk show-esque setting, a la Piper's Pit, what have you. So that was okay. But I'm just over I know I'm not the only one, so I'm not trying to sound pretentious and but I'm over the 20-minute stand in the ring, yell at the crowd promo. It's done. It's passé. Move on.
I cannot agree
new.
more.
Or something old. Find something old. That might work.
And it's been something that they've been doing for far too long. And you're right. It was, like I said, to open up Raw with the Miz segment, it was actually refreshing.
Yes.
You know, it wasn't the same old, okay, someone's going to come out. I mean, literally the only, and as much as we went on the tangent and rant prior, the only time in recent memory where I have truly looked forward to the opening of Monday Night Raw was after WrestleMania, when Lesnar beat Taker.
Yes.
And it wasn't because I wanted to hear not Lesnar, excuse me.
Reigns.
When Reigns beat Taker. And it wasn't so much that I wanted to hear what Reigns was going to say. I wanted to see the crowd's reaction.
Yeah. I mean, the post-WrestleMania crowd has been, since we call it the Yes Movement, since, 2012 or 13, whenever Daniel Bryan lost to Sheamus in 18 seconds. That was when the post-Mania crowd really exploded. The crowd chanted, yes, 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 through the entire show. I mean, Alberto Del Rio came out, they chanted C at him. It was unbelievable. The only time that they stopped, it was 2012, because that was the same night that Brock Lesnar returned. And that was the only thing that got them off of Daniel Bryan.
Yeah.
But please continue what you were saying.
But yeah, getting back to that, that was the first time in a very, very, very long time that I had looked forward to the opening segment of Monday Night Raw, because it has over the years gotten longer and longer and longer.
Well, with Raw being 3 hours, I mean.
Exactly. Well, and we're not even going to talk about that, because everybody, I mean, that's a topic on podcasts, on Facebook, on wrestling websites, that it's a dead horse. Everybody is tired of the 3 hour Monday Night Raw.
Well, they can't get rid of it though, because USA is the one that made the deal. Apparently, even the insiders, the higher ups, the WWE don't want to do 3 hours. But USA, it might be part of their negotiation that they want to go back to 2 hours. Who knows?
They might not have to worry about that much longer, especially if, the rumors are true, where Vince is looking at possibly moving everything onto the network.
I can see the benefit of it. I think there would be a lot of backlash initially. I think they would lose subscriptions. I think people would... I don't think they'd really lose money, because they could still get ad revenue on the network. They would get 100% of what they're making.
I don't see why people would be complaining. I mean, to me personally, I never, growing up as a kid, could afford to buy a pay-per-view. My parents would have killed me if I would have ordered a pay-per-view back in the day. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's why for many years, you and I would go out to
Nationals, stick and sign,
pay the $5 cover and get a drink or an appetizer. We're only coming out of pocket for $15.
And watching the show with 50 other maniacs that were going just as nuts as we were.
Exactly. And that was fun. But to me, I've never, when I think about what the cost of the WWE network is, and I remember when I was telling my wife that I was finally going to break down and get it,
mm-hmm.
she was like, well, that's nuts. And I said, it's cheaper than ordering the Big Four.
Yep. It's cheaper than ordering 2 of the Big Four.
2 of the Big Four, exactly, because WrestleMania always had the higher cost. Yep. So for me, because I don't have cable, I watch Raw in other ways. Same thing with SmackDown. I watch it however I can.
Hulu, whatever. Yeah.
But to me, even if they increased my subscription to $15 a month,
Still be worth it.
It still would be worth it.
It would still be worth it with no additional content.
Exactly. I mean, I always look at it like this. I'm paying for the pay-per-views. I'm paying to watch the Rumble, Mania, Hell in a Cell, Extreme Rules, SummerSlam.
Right.
That's what I'm paying for. Everything else that I'm getting on the network is an added bonus.
Right. So
that's why I always laugh when everybody talks about, when Reigns was going through his run and it
cancel
was,
WWE Network.
cancel. I'm like, you're a bunch of idiots.
Yep.
I mean, Vince McMahon is doing something to where he is bringing the pay-per-views to a wider audience than ever
at a lower rate.
At a lower rate.
When WWE Network first came out and UFC Fight Pass came out at the same time, I was explaining to people why I was choosing WWE Network over UFC Fight Pass. And if you consider the two models, Fight Pass came out first. They rushed it to market to beat the WWE Network because they know there's a lot of fan crossover, and so they wanted to lock people into Fight Pass first, assuming they can only get one. So what they did, first of all, they were charging $12.99. They released all of the old UFC pay-per-views, all of the Pride, I think Elite FC, Affliction. And they were not showing current pay-per-views on Fight Pass, which, whatever. That's not a lost value. But what they did do is they took the fight nights that we were getting on tape delay from China or Brazil or Japan, and they put those as Fight Pass exclusive events. So they took what we were once getting for free and started charging us for it. Whereas the WWE Network took what we were once paying an arm and a leg for and started giving it to us for a vastly reduced value, vastly reduced rate.
Well,
I should say that.
I mean,
vastly increased value.
If you look at what Vince has done, I mean, the man over the years, and I mean, a lot of people are starting to say now that he's losing his edge when it comes to, storylines, creative, who he is and isn't pushing. But
we have no idea how involved in all of that he actually is at this point. He might be the final bless off, but I highly doubt that he's sitting in too many creative meetings and coming up with ideas anymore like he used to, if he ever actually did.
Well, I mean, there are reports that he's not even making trips out to the West Coast anymore for
man's
any of
in
the
his
West
70s.
Coast shows. Yeah, but getting back to what I was saying, I mean, if you look at the precursor to the WWE Network, which was the WWE Classics on Demand.
Yes.
I mean, that has, in essence, become what Netflix is now.
Yep.
What Amazon Prime is. It gave people the opportunity to go back and view what they wanted to when they wanted to.
Right. And it was pretty much the first over-the-top streaming network as well. HBO Go has said that WWE was a big part of their model. And HBO Go is wildly successful.
HBO Go is now, and I mean, and if you look at every network, I mean, the majority of the networks now have, HBO now has the HBO Now, which is online for people who don't want to have a cable subscription. A lot of these channels are coming out with their own to, allow a greater mass to view. And
people are cutting cords, man.
Well, exactly. And for me, like I said, I mean, there's not a lot of places around where I live anymore that do, or prior to the start of the WWE Network back in 2014, that were doing WWE pay-per-views. I mean, I remember as a kid, I was lucky if I got to watch WrestleMania 3 months after it happened when it came out on VHS through Coliseum Videos.
Yep, going to the video store, checking the 5 or 6 different video stores around to see if any of them were showing it, or rather not showing it, but renting it.
And we'll talk about it a little bit later when we go into, the Ghost of Wrestling's past. But for me, that was one of the biggest things when I was younger that I loved about Monday Night Raw. I found out the next night because at the time there was no internet as we know it today.
Right.
I got to find out who won the WWE champion, or back then the WWF championship.
Right.
I got to find out who won the Intercontinental, the tag team, the women's title. So that was the great thing that I loved when Monday Night Raw came on in 1993. Because watching WWF Superstars at the time, you got a little storyline here and there, but, it was mainly
squash matches and insert interviews.
Exactly. So, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Going into the main event,
right,
between
Strowman and Reigns
and Strowman,
that chair spot was one of the craziest things I've seen in a long time.
Okay, you know what though? Here's the thing, and I know when we were talking, about today or last night's match, we were talking about how Michael Cole was in rare form.
Yes.
Talking about when Booker T went off the rails and went onto a tangent during the Cesaro match.
Yes.
It made me laugh though, because it was a hell of a spot. I mean, I've never seen someone pick
a chair like that.
Exactly. But, here it is. You have Michael Cole going, oh my God, that's the greatest thing I've ever seen. And in my head, I'm going, a couple of weeks ago, you watched the man turn over an ambulance.
Yeah. I mean, hyperbole is part of wrestling. I mean, how many Monday Nitros were the greatest night in the history of our sport? So little things like that can be forgiven in my mind.
When I think about this though, especially with everything that Roman Reigns and Braun Strowman have been through in such a short period of time, watching Roman try to kill Strowman.
Yeah.
Watching Strowman try to kill Reigns, flipping over an ambulance by himself, and you're just a couple of weeks later saying that Roman being, nailed with a flying office chair is the greatest thing ever. I kind of was just like, okay.
I don't know that he said it was the greatest thing ever. I think he said that I've never seen anything like that.
If I remember, I thought he said it was one of the greatest things that he's ever seen.
Well, maybe so. It was. I'm not going to lie. It caught me off guard. It was one of the greatest things that I've ever seen, because
it was very impressive.
You
I
wouldn't
have never
just
seen
expect
someone hurl an office chair like that.
No, and for it to have been done with such control and etc. So let's go ahead and wrap up on Raw real quick. I'm going to touch on a few other things that happened in the wrestling world this week. We got the New Japan G1 Climax 27 going on. So I haven't really been keeping up on it. Yeah, slap my hand on that. I know. I was watching last night's episode, and of all of the great matches, and there are great matches, the guy that impresses me the most is Michael Elgin. This guy is a bear of a man, and he is so snug. He going off on a little tangent in the USA special, the US title tournament. Kenny Omega went up against Michael Elgin, and Michael Elgin hit him with a German suplex on the apron. It was one of the craziest things I've ever seen. And he hits these clotheslines that would make JBL crap his pants. And so, yeah, Michael Elgin really impressing me. Kenny Omega is Kenny Omega. A lot of great matches. I watched GFW, Impact Wrestling. And big note coming out of that is that Lashley and Matt Sydal are going to be facing, I think, next week for a title shot at Destination X, and that the Grand Championship changed hands, the Impact Grand Championship. Ethan Carter III beat Moose. The match went the time limit, went to the judges. EC3 had won the first round. Moose had won the second round. Third round was fairly clearly an even round. Dutch Mantell rated at 10-10, scored at 10-10. Scott Moore scored at 10-10. And Bruce Pritchard, who has a ongoing history and not a pleasant one with EC3, scored at 10-8 in favor of EC3. So there's a little bit of crazy chicanery going on there, which I'm sure we'll find out about in weeks to come. On the Ring of Honor front, Cody, don't call him Rhodes, Cody went up against Christopher Daniels. Daniels exercising his rematch clause. And it was a 2 out of 3 falls match, and Cody won that match in 2 straight falls. It was a great match. I was very surprised that he won it in 2 falls. Christopher Daniels is amazing, and I'm going to be honest, I didn't know Cody could wrestle like he has been wrestling. This guy has been having insane matches in Ring of Honor, in Impact, in everywhere. I haven't seen it yet, but his match with Okada at the United States special, New Japan special, is supposed to be off the page. Just ridiculously good. So I'm looking forward to watching that. I should be doing so in the next couple of days. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up talking about what's going on today. We did get a little crazy, went on some tangents. I apologize for that. I'm sure we'll get that reined in as we tighten up our format to figure out a little bit more of what we're going to do. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to move on to the segment we're calling Ghosts of Wrestling's Past. And like I said, I had Mike pick out the show that we were going to talk about. And because Mike is completely original and has nothing but creative and unique bones in his body, he picked the first episode of Monday Night Raw just to show you all that we are not a joke. So let's go ahead and start talking about that, Mike. One thing I'd like to point out is right from the get-go, they started with Sean Mooney and Bobby Heenan outside. Bobby Heenan trying to get into the building, and Sean Mooney telling him, no, you can't, it's sold out. Bobby Heenan saying, no, I've got to be in there. It's Monday Night Raw, it's live. They made Raw out to be the biggest thing since the Beatles, and continued to do so the entire show with Bobby Heenan trying to sneak in, doing his best misogynistic and racist stereotypes.
Also to the point where when they were doing the interviews with Heenan, they were even showing the fans that were lining up outside to buy tickets for
the next
match.
Go ahead.
To me, and I had mentioned this earlier, January 11th, 1993, that is when wrestling changed for me.
Right. I'm sure there's a lot of people that could say that. I'm not trying to diminish your own experience.
No.
But Raw was so significant that there are probably many, many wrestling fans out there that is a benchmark moment of their life.
It is, because when you think about it, it was that time when I was guaranteed week in and week out to know what was happening in the WWF at the time. It was when I found out who won the titles at, the Royal Rumble, who won the Rumble, who won at WrestleMania. It was very unique at the time, especially being a live show. And we know years later, I forgot exactly how many, I think it was maybe 2 or 3, where then they started going to the tape shows.
It wasn't even that long. They were doing it by February.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it still, though, it was a very unique thing.
Absolutely. The other thing that they did was, WWE's always been trying to tap into pop culture. Rock and wrestling. You've had, Mike Tyson. You've had, everything. Floyd Mayweather. Trying to continually stay with what's, hip, if you will. And I just did quotey fingers because everyone can see me. And they were in New York, in Manhattan, so they figured they would tap into that New York subculture. And they got two very popular, very well-known radio hosts in New York, in the form of Todd Pettengill, who, was considered, I guess, the lesser of the two because he was relegated to the Saturday shows and the pay-per-view reports. And then they got Rob Bartlett, who was one of Imus's boys, and he was their comic relief on Monday Night Raw. And in my opinion, from the moment they are introducing each other, and Rob Bartlett says he's looking forward the most to seeing Yokozuna with an M. And he's like, that guy with that diaper thingy that goes right up there between Dead Man's Land and No Man's Land? And you can just see the look on Vince McMahon's face. It was a Ron Burgundy moment where he's like, I immediately regret this decision.
Well, Rob does go down as one of the worst broadcasters in wrestling history.
Yes, he was worse than Mike Adamle, and that's saying something.
Exactly. He didn't even last until April. Here it is, Raw comes on in January, and by April of '93, he was already gone.
By the end of April, because I remember that they did things about him getting stuck in Vegas after WrestleMania, etc. So he was definitely around by the time they got to Mania, but he was replaced by Bobby Heenan in very short order. And he was just awful. He didn't know the names of the guys. He would crack jokes that undermined the product. Damian Demento came out. And he's like, well, at least he's using his real name. Or Coco Beware came out, and he said, well, guess y'all wondered what happened to Gary Coleman. And while they were chuckle-worthy jokes, they really undermined the product. And he would do things and get scolded by Vince on the air, like during the Shawn Michaels-Max Moon match. When they went to commercial, they came back from commercial, and Rob Bartlett says, while we were at the commercial break, Shawn Michaels pulled a knife, and Vince immediately, no, he didn't. We're not that raw. Still there, Mike?
Yes, I am. Sorry about that.
It's like you got kids or something you got in mind.
The jokes that were being said, you could just tell he didn't fit in. But let's talk about the fact that if you look at the card, of course, the very first match in Monday Night Raw history featured two eventual WWE Hall of Famers, one deservedly so, and the other one is still to this day kind of questioned.
Hey, I think Yokozuna deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. What are you talking about? Oh. Yeah. Coco Beware. The benchmark for really they inducted him.
Yeah. It still gets to that. You're telling me Coco Beware can be in the Hall of Fame, but China isn't. So,
right.
That's a different conversation for a different time.
I'm sure we will have it.
Oh, we definitely will. But I look at the card that evening, and it's amazing in the day of today with the 3-hour Monday Night Raws that the very first Raw in its entirety was 45 minutes.
And it holds up.
And
it holds up.
Yes.
You consider the fact that at the time, the entire WWF booking model for their weekly shows was one big match and a bunch of squashes, maybe two big matches. You had one I guess you could call Coco Beware a jobber to the stars at the time, but he was doing the high energy thing with Owen Hart, so he was still relevant. And they fed him to Yokozuna. Coco Beware was a name. People knew Coco Beware, so Yokozuna squashing him was perceived as a big deal. You had Shawn Michaels against Max Moon, and somehow Max Moon was supposed to be a big guy. I don't know, I guess maybe they were trying to get a crossover with Michelin tires or something. But
it's amazing to think that was the longest match of the evening. I mean, that came in at 10 minutes and 30 seconds,
right.
And that was for the WWF Intercontinental Championship.
Right. And
I mean, that
Max
wasn't even the main event by main event standards.
Right, and that was when Max Moon was played by Paul Diamond, if I'm not mistaken. And they had a great match. And if it is Paul Diamond, if it was Paul Diamond, I think it was.
Looking it up right now, it was actually Charles Ashenhoff who played Conan.
I think I don't think it was him on the Raw though. I think it was him at the Royal Rumble.
Okay.
And so Conan definitely played him, but I think in that instance it was Paul Diamond. Could be wrong. It's happened once or twice.
Yes, but I will go with the fact that you definitely do know way more than wrestling than I do, so I will go with what you said.
Okay. So, and then you had Damien Demento, who, again, was another jobber to the stars, just like Max Moon was, just like Coco Beware was, but they were guys with gimmicks, and only guys with gimmicks got pushes. So if they had a gimmick, it was perceived that they were a big guy, a big name. So The Undertaker versus Damien Demento, the only squash match was the Steiners versus the Executioners, and I know you've been wanting to talk about this all night, Mike. Go ahead.
Gilbert.
Yeah. I don't know that Mike knew this before today.
No,
he was doing some research, so he knew what he wanted to talk about for the show, and he discovered that Dwayne Gilbert was one of the Executioners, the other being Barry Hardy, another perennial jobber for the WWF, WWE. And they got absolutely massacred by the Steiners, as the Steiners were well known to do. And some of it was painful to watch because it would just look like it hurt, and some of it was painful to watch because they were going out of their way to do moves that hurt, and they didn't look good. So that was about the only weak link of the show other than Rob Bartlett. And man, I can't say enough how terrible he was, from his awful Mike Tyson impression.
That was
the insinuations that Mike Tyson was gay.
Calling in from prison.
Oh yes, in solitary confinement. And then Vince and Randy Savage both having to pretend that it was actually Mike Tyson. It was just bad. And what's funny is that Vince was Vince. Vince was a very capable play-by-play guy. He was hardly outstanding, but he'd done it for a long time and he knew what he was doing. Randy Savage was a fantastic color guy. The only thing that I can say negative about Randy Savage as a color guy was that some of the time he drew the attention away from the match and onto himself because he was used to being the center of attention. And that's about the only negative I can say about Randy Savage as a commentator. So,
yeah, I can agree with you, but I mean, also that's happened with other color commentators. I mean, there were many a time when, and I still consider him to this day probably one of the greatest color commentators ever, which was Bobby Heenan. I mean, he would do that sometimes, depending on the match.
But he only did it in such a way, like if it was his match that didn't matter, he would do it.
Yes, but that's what I'm saying, yeah.
But again, to the commentators, the matches should always matter. The times when Bobby Heenan would take emphasis away from the match and put it onto himself, that was really, but it was good. it was like the 92 Royal Rumble when Flair came out at number 3 and Bobby lost his mind.
Which still to this day is my favorite Royal Rumble.
I think you're in very broad company with that one. For a lot of people, it was 2004 until 2007 happened, and then somehow the 2004 Royal Rumble just erased from history.
Yeah. Here's a quick question.
Talking about Chris Benoit.
Who?
Voldemort.
Oh, okay. So here's a question I have. I went back actually knowing that we were going to talk about this, and I watched the very first Monday Night Raw.
As did I.
And it was held at the Manhattan Center in the Grand Ballroom.
Yes.
And I wanted to get your take on, because I never had the opportunity of doing it over when at Full Sail. I did get to see NXT when they made their West Coast swing last year, and I got to see them at the Hollywood Palladium.
Yeah, I have been to. I went to Full Sail, the second NXT taping that they did. If you watch episodes 4 through 7, I was like 7. Yeah, that's right, 4 episodes. Basically, you can see me and my kids sitting front row, right off a hard camera, right in front of the hard camera the entire show. It's except when I had to get up and go to the bathroom a couple times. My daughter had bright red hair. You really can't miss us. We're kind of in the corner. I'm wearing I think I'm wearing a hat. I don't know, but I'm wearing an NXT shirt. And so if you want to see what I look like and really have nightmares, go ahead and look at it. But it was a lot of fun.
Do you think that, and watching that, do you think that they've lost something in continuously staying in these larger arenas? I mean, we always talk about why certain characters have worked really well in NXT, and then they come up to the main roster and they have a really hard time. I mean, a great example of that was the Vaudevillains.
The Vaudevillains, yes.
You know,
Adam Rose, Emma,
yes.
Bailey. There's
other thing,
several.
Well, and that's the thing. You know, I go back and I look at this, and I'm watching the very first Monday Night Raw, and I love the fact that the crowd was aware of what was going on, with the exception of the several matches where Doink the Clown was walking through the crowd.
Yeah, but see,
the episode.
That worked too because it furthered his character.
Yes, but, you know, the fans didn't try to take over the show.
Okay.
Like they do now.
Yeah.
And so what do you think about, you know, what do you think that the WWE, especially with this whole cost-cutting scheme that they're going on right now, with the lack of pyro now to start off Monday Night Raw, which to me, I have no problem.
Hang on, time out for just 1 second.
Go ahead.
The lack of pyro. Did you even notice before you found out?
You know what? Not really. I mean, it was pretty hilarious. I had watched Raw a couple of times, didn't even notice it. And when I was listening to JR's podcast, he was talking about it, and I'm like sitting there going, "Did they really cut pyro?"
Yep.
And to me, you know, the way I look at it is, I don't have a problem with it. Save the pyro for the big shows,
right?
Because to me,
the stadium shows.
When you watch the pyros that they do at WrestleMania, you know, you're sitting there going, wow.
See, I think personally that they should have ended pyro years ago. Like when the Undertaker's pyro broke off of the cables and burned people in the crowd at WrestleMania. Or when the Undertaker caught fire at Elimination Chamber.
And still finished the match.
He started the match. He didn't just finish the match, he started the match. It was during his entrance that he caught fire. And
it was
that was actually kind of scary when you watch it. And you know, he acted quick and got that coat off. But if you looked at him the next night on Raw, people were talking about the mustard stains on his face. because he was burned and he had burned cream and he had makeup and he looked awful. And it's to be expected.
Yeah, like I said, I don't miss it. I don't miss it at all. I don't think it added to the show. I also don't think, it's missing now. Okay.
So going back to what you were talking about, though, the Manhattan Center it was the scene of many of the early runs. It was about the end of '93 when they really started touring. But they would really be in the early days they'd be in Poughkeepsie or they'd be in Fern Creek, Pennsylvania or Bushkill, Pennsylvania. Still smaller venues. But they would go up there, they'd film a couple of Raws, Superstars, what have you. Alundra Blaze in December of '93 won the women's title in Poughkeepsie. And funnily enough, she also won her third title in Poughkeepsie. But that's just me showing off at this point. But, yeah, I know. Surprise, surprise, right? But, you're supposed to react. I'm telling jokes. You're supposed to laugh so people think I'm funny.
If it was funny, I would have laughed.
See, that's not very nice. I don't think I can continue. So anyway, are you aware? I'm sure many people that would be listening to this podcast, at least 4 of the 6 people, are going to know that the Manhattan Center is also the Hammerstein Ballroom, which is where both of the ECW one-night stands were held, along with many other ECW shows. So it maxed out at about 2,000 people.
Well, if I remember correctly, at the Manhattan Center, the Grand Ballroom is actually separate from the Hammerstein Ballroom. There are 2 venues inside.
Okay.
Because if you actually watch the original Monday Night Raw and you look at the balcony, compared to ECW One Night Stand, it is 2 totally different facades.
Because they couldn't renovate over 12 years.
No, but what I'm saying is, if I remember correctly,
you might be right. But you said the Grand Ballroom, the Grand Ballroom at the Manhattan Center is the Grand Ballroom. That's the Hammerstein Ballroom. So same venue. It's the same venue. It might be different. It'd be like the what's the theater at Madison Square Garden? I think it's the theater at Madison Square Garden, actually. That's where they had the Lions Den match at SummerSlam '98 was in that adjacent theater to Madison Square Garden. So same kind of thing, I guess. But they've definitely revisited that. Having it at that small, intimate venue is what made it ECW the ECW One Night Stand shows so good. Just remembering that when John Cena threw his shirt out in the crowd, they threw it back. They threw it out again, they threw it back.
So I did look it up. It said in the early 1990s, wrestling show WWF Monday Night Raw broadcast from the Grand Ballroom a record 28 times, including the first ever episode of Monday Night Raw on January 11th, 93, which was broadcasted live on the USA Network. Its Hammerstein Ballroom has hosted Extreme Championship Wrestling events in the years before its closing and its revivals in 2005 and 2006.
Cool.
Since 2006, the Manhattan Center has played host to a yearly Ring of Honor event, both in the Grand Ballroom and the Hammerstein Ballroom.
Well, all right then. Color me surprised. I thought they were the same place.
You and I have been to it's actually kind of funny with the amount of years that we've known each other. We've never been
to a live event. No, we've never gone to a show together ever.
Never gone to a show period together. I I had gone to Monday Night Raws. You had gone to many an event. The last ones that I have gone to have actually been in both smaller venues. Like I said, I went to the NXT show at the Hollywood Palladium, and I also went to a taping of SmackDown when it was out here in Ontario, California at the Citizens Bank Arena. And to me, I actually enjoy the show more in a smaller arena. And I just wonder if you think they will ever go back to that. At least when, say, Triple H, if he ever does take over the reins from Vince, do you think that he will go back to a smaller, television taping and save the bigger events to the larger pay-per-views?
No, I don't. I think it's you're moving backwards. A lot of people lost their minds when WrestleMania 30 was held at the Superdome, not Silverdome, Superdome, instead of Madison Square Garden. But they got 90,000 people into the Superdome.
I agree, but I was one of those people because up until that point, WrestleMania 1, WrestleMania 10, WrestleMania 20, the marquee event was always, the anniversary event was held back at SG.
Now, would you, if you were in charge, would you have done that and lost how many millions of dollars? Now, what I could have seen them do is hold it at MetLife Stadium, where they held 29, and do that like they did that with the Hall of Fame being at MSG, and and they could have done an NXT show at MSG or something. I don't know, but and I think that would have satisfied a lot of people. But I think, as wrestling fans, we get nostalgic, and rightfully so. But we put too much emphasis on things that don't matter.
I agree to a certain extent. My only take is when you listen to a lot of the wrestlers who do interviews and they talk about, the larger WrestleManias. I mean, let's not forget, the first outdoor WrestleMania wasn't supposed to be WrestleMania 9.
It's supposed to be WrestleMania 7.
Exactly. And they use the excuse of security reasons for moving it next door to the LA Sports Arena because of the whole Sergeant Slaughter, Iraqi sympathizer, yet people who know wrestling know that it was just due to extremely poor tickets.
If you watch the True Story of WrestleMania on the WWE Network, which is an incredible documentary, if you haven't had a chance to watch it, it's insane how good this documentary is. Anyway, they talk about that, and they talk about the fact that they were concerned about security issues, blah, 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 so they were considering moving the venue. And we had sold about 17,000 tickets so far, and that's how many the Sports Arena held, the LA Sports Arena held, so we just moved it over there. And so it's a very roundabout way of them admitting that they were having poor ticket sales without
them having to say, yeah.
Right. So do I doubt that they were having security problems? No, I don't, because according to Sergeant Slaughter and a lot of people, when the angle first was getting going, he had bomb threats at his house.
Yes.
So
that was also right during the time of the Iraq War, though.
Yes.
Yes. Desert Storm.
Right.
But getting back to what I was saying, to me, now most people they weren't a fan of it. I personally loved WrestleMania 9.
I did too.
It was new. Now we won't talk about probably one of the worst matches that The Undertaker ever had to compete in WrestleMania, but it was something new and it was something exciting. But I think the problem with today's WrestleMania is, and like I said, a lot of the wrestlers, when they do an interview, they talk about it. It's that sheer size of being at these outdoor facilities, and they feel that it actually has an effect on their match because they have a hard time hearing the crowds. It just, that sound, instead of being held in with a roofed stadium, they said it's extremely difficult to gain the crowd's reaction. I know Austin has said that on occasion. And so my question is, I understand what they're trying to do. And I know Vince has always said that one day he wants WrestleMania to be bigger than the Super Bowl. Exactly. But at least, do you think they'll also move WrestleManias away from these outdoor venues and go back to the larger indoor venues, i.e. the Superdome, Ford's Field?
That's what you mean, as far as stadiums, but dome stadiums. Yes, absolutely.
You know, okay. Now, I mean, I personally would like to see, you know, the Monday Night Raw or the SmackDowns go back to a smaller size than some of the places that they go to right now. I just think the crowd tends to be a little bit better in some of those.
Well, there's an argument to be made for that in certain areas, because in certain areas they don't sell out. But, I mean, if you're in New York, are you going to run the Garden, or you going to run the Nassau? If you're in Chicago, are you going to run the Horizon? Well, I don't even know what the Horizon is, if it even exists anymore. But are you going to run the Horizon, or are you going to run Allstate? Or not Allstate, it is Allstate. Horizon is Allstate, or United Center.
Yeah. Now, like, for me personally, I would love to see, instead of coming, when they come back out here, I personally can't stand Staples Center. I never have liked it. Growing up, you know, and my favorite sport, period, is hockey. Always has been. I hate watching hockey games at Staples Center. It's horrible viewing. I mean, the nosebleeds are ridiculously high. The way that arena was designed. Same thing, I don't like watching games at the Honda Center. I personally would like to see them, when they come back out here, I would love to see them hold Monday Night Raw over at the Forum. I was just there for a Garth Brooks concert. It's been completely remodeled. It's absolutely stunning inside.
WCW used to run the Forum back in the day.
Exactly. And if I remember, even to a certain extent, weren't they running some episodes of Glow out of...
Oh, I'm sure they were. It was all based out of there.
Exactly.
I don't know where else they would have run it.
Yeah, I mean, well, I remember the original they were running out of, if I remember correctly, because I watched a documentary on it because Netflix was coming out with the TV show.
Right.
If I remember correctly, they were running some of the original episodes out of the Riviera Casino in Vegas.
Okay.
But I would like to see them go back to the Forum. The acoustics in that building are absolutely incredible, especially now that they don't have to deal with pyro anymore. You don't have to worry about the ventilation that you needed at a place like a Staples or the Honda Center. And I just think, I mean, the furthest seat away from where the center of the ring would be is only like 134 feet.
Well, I mean, me and Katie, my daughter, Katie, we are going to the SmackDown taping in Las Vegas at Thomas and Mack. And that's another one that's not this gigantic arena, because it's a UNLV arena. So it's a smaller school stadium. I mean, it's not small by any stretch of the imagination, but it's hardly Staples. And we're going, and it's her first WWE show. Pretty excited about it because, one, it's a SmackDown taping, and she absolutely loves the New Day, and two, it's the finals of the Mae Young Classic. So Should be a win-win.
I cannot wait to hear you. I remember when I took Taylor to her very first wrestling event. It was the NXT taping. She had started watching NXT with me at home, and I will always remember. And that is the one thing I do have to give wrestling fans credit for. The majority of them, they are good people. I mean, we had the general admission seating, so we were in the balcony, and the people who had got their they got their seat in the balcony. They had no problem.
Hey, you're starting to break up there, buddy.
Sorry, you there?
Yeah.
Okay. So, they were just extremely nice to her. They let her move all the way up to the front of the balcony, and they were getting a kick out of her reaction when Nakamura came out or when Bobby Roode came out. And like I said, I will always remember the look on her face the first time when she got to hear both Nakamura and Bobby Roode's entrances. And I just think for me, and having grown up and watched Monday Night Raws at Staples Center. I mean, I was at the Raw that was the Stephanie McMahon wedding with Tess. That was at Staples Center.
You were at that Raw?
That's
funny, because so was I. How did we never know this?
Well, then, hey, you know what? We did attend.
No, we did, but we didn't know each other.
Exactly. So, but I was there, and to me, I actually enjoyed the NXT taping more at the smaller venue than any event I ever saw at Staples Center.
I went to a SmackDown house show in North Carolina back in November. And because I'm retired military, I get the free ticket. And I didn't realize you get the best seat available. And I had fourth row floor seats. And it was pretty spectacular. I've never sat that close at a show, other than smaller shows, NXT. Never sat that close at a WWE show. And so you get me on some indie shows, I'm like in the ring because I'm helping set it up. But it was incredible. It was the first time I ever got to see AJ Styles wrestle live. He was wrestling Dean Ambrose in a street fight. And got to see American Alpha. Got to see Becky Lynch, who I really like. And so it was just a really fun show. And it was it was at the Crown Center in Fayetteville. It was not close to sold out. It was a blast. It was a very, very fun show. They interact with the crowd a lot. I think it was Dasha Fuentes was the host of the show, and she was like pulling kids out of the crowd to be guest ring announcers and stuff like that. It was just really neat. So I totally feel you on how the smaller shows can be a lot more fun. Do I think the WWE is going to go back to that? No, I don't. And the prime example of that is the NXT takeovers that are before the pay-per-views. They do them in the big arenas, sometimes the same arena that WWE is running their pay-per-view at the next night.
But even on those, some of those, I think, with the exception of the SummerSlam, because Barclays Center is not a extremely large arena. I think capacity at the Barclays Center is only, when you factor in floor seats, 16,000 maybe.
I think it's bigger than that, but it's still it's not much bigger.
Yeah. So with that being said, I will say, and we're gonna have to fix this almost now 16-year problem that we've had. Let's make a deal. When the new football stadium is built in Los Angeles, there's already rumors that WrestleMania is going to come there.
Sounds good to me, brother.
Let's go.
That sounds like a plan to me, brother. Right. I still don't understand why you're not coming up to Vegas. Oh, wait, no, yes, I do, because your birthday is 2 weeks later.
And I'm going to the very first LA Kings Las Vegas Knights hockey game on my birthday.
So. Yeah.
With that being said, we're coming up on close to 2 hours. So
yeah, well, our phone call is, but we're only at about an hour and a half for the podcast here, so we're still doing okay. I think, I mean, of the 6 people that were listening, if we still have 5, then I'll be happy. But let's go ahead. Yeah, let's go ahead and move on to the Indie Spotlight segment of the show. Now, like I said, I live in Utah presently. Before Utah, I was in Colorado Springs. And I have, and Mike can back up on this, for the longest time, I have wanted to be a wrestling promoter. Not even a wrestler. I did backyard wrestling because, well, everyone did. But I was also the booker promoter. And I thought I ran some pretty damn good shows, considering that nobody actually knew how to wrestle, and especially Mike. And God, you were so bad. I can't even. And if it was possible, you were a worse referee.
Which is true.
Yeah, which is funny because you're a professional referee now for hockey.
Yeah.
But still.
But yeah, no, ever since I've met you, that's something that you would always, I mean, you and I would literally watch a Monday Night Raw at your grandmother's house, and you and I would sit outside for
3 hours after Raw,
discussing what we would want to see happen the next week.
And we didn't get the live feed, mind you. We were watching it from 9 to 11 on the West Coast feed. So we were out there until like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, just sitting on that wall between my grandma's house and her neighbor's, just chain smoking cigarettes, which thank God we both quit that, and just talking about wrestling forever. And
it was getting to the point, though, where I was actually getting really close to getting your grandmother DirecTV so we could watch the East Coast feed live. So we weren't sitting up till 2 in the morning.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. But you know what? I wouldn't trade those nights for anything, man. We used to have so much fun.
I still look back at all of those evenings, and they still to this day, I have very fond memories of talking about, no matter how bad things were going in our personal lives at that time.
And they were
through some horrible personal stuff.
Yeah.
With families, work, whatever.
Drama.
Every Monday night, I knew I could go over to your place and
forget about it for a couple of hours.
For 5 to 6 hours.
Yeah, and it wasn't just Mondays, dude. There were weeks that went by that we hung out every night,
every day,
and just talking wrestling because we worked together, and we just were always together. Me, you, and Ray.
Yeah.
God, that loser.
It even brings back the good old memories of the Mormon Mauler and the Tallahassee Castle Tosser.
Oh, God. I don't know why you would bring that guy up.
You know what? Hey, but like I said, that kind of stuff that we were dealing with back then.
Yeah. Hey, but we're down to 2 listeners now, and one of them is my mom. So let's go ahead and keep this moving.
Yeah.
Finish your thought, please.
No, I was going to say those were some of the best times.
Yeah. Wrestling was life.
And that's when I was the most involved in wrestling. I mean, I learned more about wrestling from you than I had ever learned prior to that. And that's why for the 2 of you listening, which includes Tristan's mother, I will have to tell people, you do have to go, and keep looking at the Pro Wrestling Almanac. I mean, just a breakdown on the championships that you have on there. I mean, while we've been talking,
I'm getting on there anyway.
Yeah, but I mean, there are things that even I, either didn't know about or forgot about, like the WWF Intercontinental Tag Team Championship.
Yep. Wow, you actually did look at my page. I'm impressed.
Oh yeah, no, I'm on it right now. I mean, I love the fact that you have taken the time for everything, even going down to the $1 Million Championship.
Yep.
You know, I mean, the few times that has been held by what, 4 people?
Yes. Ted DiBiase Jr., Virgil, and Steve Austin.
I mean, you know, so I mean, it just the fact that you've put that kind of work in there, and truthfully, I think the only one, I'm looking at it right now, I mean, the only belt that you're missing picture-wise
is the Intercontinental Tag Team Championship.
The Intercontinental Tag Team Championship. I mean,
now,
you even...
It's not that surprising, though, because there was only one champion. Now, the title histories are far from complete because everything pulls from the database, and that database is vastly incomplete. But I'm working on it every day.
Oh, no, definitely.
But
so, I mean, especially for someone who wants to learn, I mean, and to me, this has always been the fun thing about it is I remember when you and I, you know, would sit there and up until I'd say about when we stopped hanging out, because when did you move
2003.
back? 2003.
Right before WrestleMania. The last show we went and watched together was No Way Out 2003.
That's right.
Scott Steiner versus Triple H.
That's right. You could make WWF champion from the very beginning.
Still can.
I know, which, I mean, it is an amazing feat. But the fact that it's all there and you have, you know, the dates where, you know, the results for the entire card on top of that.
And there's a lot of sites that do have this information, but it's the breakdown that I'm trying to present it in a different way. So that's why I want to have the referees at the matches and the ring announcers, commentators, timekeepers, etc. There?
Yeah, no, definitely. I was letting you go. So.
Oh, that's why I stopped. But yeah, so to go back to it, the love of wrestling has always been there, and I never wanted to be Hulk Hogan. I wanted to be Vince McMahon. And so when I got to Colorado, and I actually was putting thought and effort into starting an indie promotion in Colorado Springs because there wasn't one there. It's a big city, but there wasn't any wrestling closer than Denver, which is only an hour away, but there was still nothing local. So I was trying to do that, and in trying to do that, we found a company up in Denver, and we went up to one of their shows. And I started networking and talking to people and met a bunch of good guys, wrestlers and referees, promoters, etc. And I was speaking to one of these wrestlers that wanted to work for me, and should I ever start running shows. And he told me that if I needed any help, I should talk to this guy named Nick Gossard. And Nick Gossard is a really good guy. I talked to him, and he provided me with so much good information, tips on how to run shows, how to set up shows, where I needed to be insured, what licensing I needed to get. And I went up to a show in Wyoming and met him in person, and he's a good dude. And he runs a promotion in Colorado, out of Denver, called Lucha Libre and Laughs. And in my opinion, I've been to several of his shows, and in my opinion, from all of the companies that I have been to in Colorado, and I think I've been to all of them that were at least there when I was there, that Lucha Libre and Laughs is probably the best run promotion in Colorado.
Now, here's a question I have for you, because, I mean, I will be the first one to admit it. I've never really been into the indie wrestling scene. Right. I mean, with the exception of UPW when they were out here, and I never made it to a show. Right. You know, there wasn't at the time that much indie wrestling. I mean, I've always mainly been a WWF/WWE and even to a certain point WCW guy.
Me too.
What makes that promotion as good as you say it is?
It's unique. So you go to a show.
What makes it?
Well, I'll tell you. I'll tell you.
Okay.
You go to a show. You're probably only going to see 4 or 5 matches. You're going to be there for 2 to 3 hours, but you're only going to see 4 or 5 matches. They're going to be high quality matches, but it's also a stand-up comedy show. So.
Oh, okay. Hold on. Whoa. So the guy that's taking chair shots is giving stand-up at the same time?
No. The commentators who are mic'd and commentating to the crowd, which is very common in indie promotions, are comedians. And their names are, I will get that. I'm going to get that information right now. But I know one of them is Nathan Lund, but I can't think of the name of the other guy. So the commentators are stand-up comedians, and they have other stand-ups coming in and doing the stand-up between the matches. And they have a host, Valentino, and he MCs, he introduces the matches, he introduces the comedians, and it's an adult show. One of the shows that I went to, there were kids in the audience, and they went out of their way to be as vulgar as possible so those parents would be uncomfortable enough to never bring their kids back. And boy, were they. Yes. And so they do the festivals. They do like the Denver Taco Fest, and they did the Boulder Taco Fest, and they do the Zombie Crawl. They do a show called the Zombie Brawl, and most of their shows are they're named after wrestling terms. Like they do a show called Smart Week, and they've got the next show that they've got coming up is it's called Killing the Business.
Killing the Business.
Yeah.
Sunday, August.
Yes, it's coming up at the Oriental Theater in Denver. And they do most of their shows at the Oriental Theater. Okay. And they have great matches. They had a world champion and a light heavyweight champion. Or they had a heavyweight champion and a light heavyweight champion.
Looks like they're okay. Yeah.
Sorry, and they recently, I think a year and a half ago, crowned tag team champions. They're about to crown a women's champion, and they're doing that at an event called Breaking the Glass Ceiling, and that's going to be next month. And it's at the Oriental Theater. It is on. I'm sorry, I should be more prepared for this, but it is. It's called Breaking the Glass Ceiling, sorry. And it is on September 22nd. And one of the things that I like about Lucha Libre Glass is that, one, it's done in a 400-seat theater. So it has that small, intimate feeling like you're talking about. But attendance-wise, kills the indie promotions around there. And it does so because it provides something unique. They get big names to come in. They get Marty the Moth from Lucha Underground to come in. They Mike Seidel, Matt Seidel's brother. He's going to be wrestling Royce Isaacs, who I will be talking about more in the future. Royce Isaacs is probably my favorite wrestler in the world today. I consider him a friend. He's a good guy, and he's a phenomenal wrestler. But
I was looking here. They also looks like they have occasionally Colt Cabana wrestles.
Yes, Colt Cabana's wrestled with them. They've got a lot of people. Aligato is wrestling in this women's championship tournament. They're going to have Leva Bates of Blue Pants. She's going to be in that women's tournament. And so go ahead.
Here's a question I have for you.
Yeah.
Who, if any, are the people that we should be looking at? Because I definitely am going to try to pay more attention to them. You've talked to it. Who are the guys or the women that we should be looking at that could possibly end up making their way to a Ring of Honor, a New Japan Pro Wrestling, even a Global Force Wrestling?
Okay.
And even go higher to that into the WWE.
Okay, number one, Royce Isaacs. I know I already said this. Like I say, he's probably my favorite wrestler in the world today. He's phenomenal. He has already had a WWE tryout. He's worked with DDT in Japan and DDT Dynamic Dream Team. And he worked for Paragon Pro Wrestling out of Vegas. At one point, he was the Paragon North American champion, the Lucha Libre and Laughs heavyweight champion, and the Primos heavyweight champion. Primos being another promotion in Denver. Another really good promotion. I'm going to talk about them at length at some point as well. He went from being a tag team wrestler, wrestling as part of a stable called the Upgrades, to leading the stable and winning the championship over the course of 3 shows. And he was the first wrestler that I met when I showed up at the Primo Slave to the Deathmatch show. And he's impressed me. He is always trying to learn. So he's one. Another one. Yeah.
Because you were talking about Royce, correct?
Yeah, Royce Evans.
Okay. Yeah, I was just reading it, and one of the things when asked about himself, he says, "I'm the guy you love to hate. I'm the team captain who invited you to the frat party just to empty a beer on your head. I'm the bad boy you thought had a heart of gold who ended up in bed with your sister. And yet still, when I'm in that squared circle, your eyes are following me as sure as a hangover follows tequila shots."
And as well written as that is, he cuts promos the exact same way.
I mean, so he plays a very, very convincing... I mean, because you know me, I've always been a huge fan of the heels.
Right.
Always have. I mean, whether or not...
As most smarts are.
Yeah, I mean, whether it was Jake the Snake Roberts, I mean, just, I've always been a fan. That's why, like I said, I love the Miz's work that he's doing right now. So, I mean, he plays a very convincing heel then.
Yeah, very. Very, very,
okay.
Very. And so, another one you want to watch out for, a guy by the name of Adrian Matthews. I've seen him at a few New Era wrestling shows in Colorado. This guy's going around, working everywhere he can work. He holds titles in numerous indie promotions. He's going to be one that gets picked up without question. There's a lot of really, really good talent. And there's a few guys that I think with some more work, they're still really young in the business, so with some more work, they're really going to stand out. There's Cody Devine. He used to be Royce Isaacs' tag team partner. He's one that he has come a long, long way. He was just recently the Primos heavyweight champion. He actually won it from Royce Isaacs. Another guy you got to look out for, he doesn't wrestle in Colorado anymore. It's a guy by the name of Dak Draper, Dakota Draper. He wrestles in St. Louis in a company out there. I'm totally unprepared because I didn't think I was going to be bringing this portion up. But he wrestles in Colorado and other places as Sammy Six Guns Jr. And he was also in NXT as Travis Tyler. He's one that he's been there. He has been in NXT. In fact, my understanding was that he was one of the potentials to get the Tyler Breeze gimmick before they gave it to Mike Dalton. And so then let's see. Got a few guys that have already moved on to Florida. They make appearances occasionally on NXT. You've got Rob Ryzen. He's a Colorado guy. He comes back occasionally, but he wrestles in NXT fairly regularly. You've got Alex Light. This guy, I don't think I've ever seen anybody work as hard as this guy does and try so hard to get over and be successful at it. Most guys that try that hard, they don't do well. This guy, the first time I saw him wrestle, do you remember just picture like Albert or Miguel Perez, as far as the fact that this guy was wearing a bodysuit, if you will, a natural bodysuit. And he came out, and we started chanting sweater vest at him. And he encouraged us to keep doing it. And it got to the point where it became his standard chant. And we would chant, "Sweater's gonna kill you," and "Fear the sweater." And he was around, he was from Wisconsin. And he came down to Denver, and he put his work in. He was down there for about a year, and then he moved on to Florida. And this guy is in real tight with Tyson Kidd. Thank you for that, Mike. He's been hanging out with Tyson Kidd, TJ Wilson. And he has gone to the gym. He has lost tons of weight. And he is he's in phenomenal shape, and he's going to make it. He's young. He's 22, 23 years old, and he's going to make it. Those are all the ones that I can think of off the top of my head that are really putting the work in and trying to be full-time wrestlers. They don't have anything else going on. There's a lot of other talent out there. There's a guy by the name of Lonnie Valdez, and he has trained a lot of this talent in Colorado. And he trained Coda Divine, I know for sure, amongst many others. And he's had so many matches. He wrestled Seth Rollins back when he was Tyler Black, and he's just he is molding a lot of the future of wrestling. So
nice.
But yeah, let's go back to Lucha Libre and Laos. They've got their next show, Killing the Business. It's August 13th. Royce Isaacs versus Mike Seidel is going to be at that show. They've got the Breaking the Glass Ceiling show on September 22nd. That's also at the Oriental Theater. They're crowning the first women's championship. The belt actually reads Colorado's Toughest Woman, which I love. And like I say, they're always rated as like the top events to do in Denver whenever they're running a show. They put on a fantastic show, and like I say, it's not just wrestling, it's stand-up comedy, it's a lot of fun, and it's probably the best brunch show in Colorado.
I was looking at the list of the comics that they have there. Everybody from Adam Caden Holland, who's been on the Conan O'Brien show, to Bobcat has been there.
Yep. Bobcat actually worked some wrestling gimmicks, too.
Okay, interesting. Definitely going to have to give them a look at.
Yep. Well, all right. So I apologize. We have gone nearly 2 hours. We totally intended on going for an hour. Mike was sending me messages saying, folks, Tristan has been hit with a chair by Steve Austin, so we're going to have to end this show. So until next week, for the unconscious Tristan Hathaway, I'm Mike Marion. You have been listening to the Pro Wrestling Almanac podcast. Yeah, that is pretty much it. I think that I just got sucked into a loop. Mike was asking me questions. I wasn't ready for other stuff for other weeks. So you kind of made me, dump my whole bag in the first show, but that's all right. We'll go further in depth into it on other shows. We're going to try to make sure we keep this tapered down. We're going to try to keep it to an hour in the future. If that means we're going to have to cut things out, what have you, there might be things cut out of this show as well. You might be sitting there looking at it going, what? It's only an hour 15. Why are they saying 2 hours? Well, that's because this is pre-recorded and we got out of control. So,
it's like the good old days of sitting on the wall.
Yes, it is. It sure is. And we totally knew this was going to happen, too. But, that's the magic of pre-tapes and editing. If you are interested in being a part of the show, if you would like to bring up topics or you have any questions for us, you can reach us on Twitter at PW Almanac or on Facebook, Pro Wrestling Almanac. And you can always check out the website, prowrestlingalmanac.com. And we also have a Gmail, prowrestlingalmanac@gmail.com. So if you want to get a hold of us, tell us our show's annoying, never do it again, and go ahead, while you're at it, just go ahead and kill yourselves. We're totally cool with listening to that. We might not, follow it to the letter, but we'll definitely keep it in mind. So thank you for listening and bearing through all of the garbage, which hopefully we can cut some of it out. And, you got anything you want to say, Mike?
No, just, it was, I was looking forward to this all day. Can't wait to do it again. It was a lot of fun. And like I said, for you and me, this will be like going back to 2001, 2002, just sitting back and reliving some
talking wrestling.
Exactly, talking wrestling. So can't wait to do it again, my friend.
Someday we'll get some of the other boys involved too.
Would be nice.
As I may have mentioned, we're going to try to get some interviews in here. Probably not this week since we're already running a 2-hour show here. But in the future, I was thinking, we'd be talking to maybe Nick Gossard, some of the other wrestlers that I may have mentioned. I'm throwing some feelers out there for some bigger names. That might have to come later because I don't know if what they're going to want in the terms of compensation. I'm sure it will not be insignificant. So that might have to wait until later. But thank you for listening. Thank you for your patience. If you have anything to contribute to the show, positive or negative, please let us know. I know there's a lot of growing pains here. Hopefully, in the weeks to come, we will iron them out. But as for tonight, for Mike Mayer, I'm Tristan Hathaway. Thank you for listening to the Pro Wrestling Almanac podcast. Have a good night and love your wrestling.